Hey hosers, welcome back to my channel. Today we are working on a simple drip system to deliver water from a hose bib to individual plants or planters. So this is going to be different from the kind of drip system you would want to install in a garden bed where you plant things in different positions every season. Instead, we're building something that's a little bit less flexible. You'd want to use a system like the one I'm going to go over if you are watering potted plants on your patio, which is why I'm doing it. It would also work well in an herb garden where you're going to have things set up the same way year after year. So you're going to be delivering water just to that spot. Spot irrigation like this is a really good idea because it will reduce the amount of weeds in your garden by starving them for water everywhere that you don't have a plant you want. So it is not without its purpose. Before we start our project, it is a good idea to make sure we've got all of our pieces that we're going to need to do the project. And I'm going to pretend that that is how I do projects instead of how I actually do projects, which is getting started, getting frustrated, and making multiple trips to the big box store. So for the trunk line, I'm going to be using this 1/2 inch drip irrigation line. It doesn't have emitters, it's just solid tubing. And then for the individual branches of my system, I'm going to be using this 1/8 inch tubing. It also doesn't have emitters. I've got my emitters right here. Now the reason I went with 1/8 inch instead of the 1/4 inch tubing that you are going to find at your big box store is just because these emitters are compatible with 1/8 inch tubing, and just doing the 1/8 inch all the way down is easier than stepping down in diameter to interface with my emitters. So this system will work just fine if you use 1/4 inch tubing instead of 1/8 inch tubing for your emitters. But don't worry about that. Now, since I'm starting at my hose bib, I'm going to want a piece that allows me to transition, oops, not this one, this one, from my hose diameter here. So I've got a female threaded connector here, and then this is 1/2 inch size right here. This is going to take me from my hose bib to my main line on my irrigation system. It's an important first step. But before that, it is a really good idea to run a pressure regulator because this is a drip system. While my culinary water comes in, we've got it on a pressure regulator, so I think it's about 70 or 80 psi, and this pressure regulator is going to drop me down to 20 psi. That's going to really reduce wear and tear on your drip system, and it's also going to prevent emitter blowout. So it's a good idea. Put a pressure regulator in your system if you're coming from city water. I also have an end cap for my 1/2 inch tubing. The reason I like the threaded end cap is that if I wanted to, I could continue to run by just screwing another one of these on, and I can run more lines. So it gives me a little bit of flexibility without any additional work. You don't have to use a threaded end cap. I think they've got the figure 8 closures that you can just drop on the end. They work just fine as well. You want to make sure that you have tubing couplings. So these are 1/8 inch tubing couplings. The ones you find at the big box store are going to be 1/4 inch tubing couplings. So this allows me to punch a hole in my main line and then pop in a tubing coupling and then push this onto it so that we've made our transition. And then for convenience and to keep things neat and tidy, I have some tube straps here that I'm going to be screwing it all to my deck with. And I'm really excited about this system because it's going to allow me, well, I'm going to run it from my hose bib all the way over there, and it's going to come along the front of my deck and follow under the lip all the way to the other side. So I can run lines to my lemon tree, my avocado tree, my weeping pussy willow. I'm not going to water the hens and chicks. Don't ask. They're so drought hardy, it's pointless. But I'm thinking I might put an herb garden right here, and I can run lines from this system down into my herb garden as well. Now optionally, you are going to have a timer. I would highly recommend it. So that way you can just put it on a timer and forget about it and everything will still get watered. That's really nice. And optionally, but I highly recommend that you're going to put a manifold on your hose bib. What that will do is it will allow you to leave everything hooked up and ignore it and continue to forget about it while still running a regular hose off your hose bib if you want to. So as you can see, I did choose to go with a manifold here, and I got my hose coming off and going over to the greenhouse, and then this part goes to the timer I've already installed. And the reason I didn't go over timers is that you're all gonna probably get your own timers. So I'm gonna just pull this nipple off because it's not compatible with what I want to do. I'm gonna screw on the pressure regulator first. And these are pretty cool because you can just screw them on and you have your pressure regulated. Theoretically, I could use this on the other side of my timer, but I didn't. Now I'm going to put my join that will allow me to go from 3/4 inch hose to 1/2 inch tubing right here. And I'm ready to start attaching my tubing. Now I'm going to take the end of my 1/2 inch tubing, and one reason I chose not to go with the big box style stuff is that this is just a lot easier to install because it's not a pressure fit. It kind of screws on and then holds it nice and tight. Now it probably isn't necessary for me to pre-drill as I install these, but it is probably also going to be something most of you need to do because some of you probably do have real wood patios, and if you want to use tube straps, you're going to want to pre-drill so you don't split your wood. This is not real wood, so it's not as necessary. And I'm just going to screw this first one on without the hose there a little bit so it's easier. I'll use my tube strap for a guide for where to put my next hole. And now let's bring this up and through and screw through the hole. There's a little bit of resistance because these guys come a little bit torqued as you unpackage them, the tubes. So if you don't account for that, things can get a little kinky. All right, now I've got my hose strapped on, and I left enough slack through here that I can adjust things as needed. Also, you'll find that in the heat of the day, these hoses will expand, and so it's just nice to allow for some movement as you set it up. I'm going to go around and strap this line all around the perimeter of my patio. Okay, so we've come to the end of the line, so to speak, and now I'm just going to close off the end. And now you might notice that the tube clips are not tight on the tube. So I'm going to take this piece here, my screw-on end cap, and I'm going to use it to kind of hold everything in place. Now you don't have to have a specialized cutting tool for this stuff. It does cut just fine with scissors, but I needed a hole puncher, and it seems just mighty handy that this came with the capacity to punch holes and to cut the tubing. So I was like, yes, let's do that. Screw this on, and we are sealed. Now I can pull this tight, get a feel for where this needs to be to hold it tight. And this last one, I might end up having to pull tight again in the future, but we'll find out. And now, just to make sure everything is safe, because back along that step there, I have a walkway that passes through the same area that my line is passing through. I'm going to put a couple more tube clips through there just to make sure that any sag that happens doesn't trip and hurt anybody. So here I am at the corner. You can see this is where my lemon tree sits on the patio. Now all I need for this task is my 1/8 inch line, and remember, if you're working from the big box store, you're probably going to have 1/4 inch, and that's okay. And to start out with, I just need the couplers. You can also get a thing called a goof plug, which looks like a coupler, but it doesn't allow water through. And you can plug a goof plug in anywhere you make mistakes. Like a fool, I'm working under the assumption that I'm not going to make a mistake. Never do that. It's a terrible idea. So now I'm going to take my punching and cutting tool, clamp it over the tube where I want my line to come off. I think I'll angle it slightly so it can pass easily around this lip here, and give it a press. The hole is punched. In goes the coupling loop, and I'm going to plug it onto the end of the tubing. So this is pretty plug and play at this point. Now, ideally, if you want the tubing to go on here onto the barb easily, you should leave it sitting out in the sun, which I did not do, but we've got a pretty nice fit here anyway. And now I'm just going to pull this up to where I want it. So make sure that if you're going to a pot or a plant, you've got it where you want to end up with it. I'll show you that you can also use scissors to cut this. Give it a little more slack. It's always better to have too much hose than too little. Now I've cut this to the right length, and it's time to break open my emitters. The emitter that you use is going to vary depending on where you get your emitter. So your big box store emitters will not look like this at all. This is from Drip Depot. Oh, hello tree. You may play with my hair, that's fine. So this is a very simple and robust design, but also it's hard to see which way it's pointing. I'm going to make sure I've got this oriented right and push it into my soil. This tree is now set to be drip irrigated on a timer, and I'm just going to go repeat this process. Now there's only one more thing that you're going to want to consider, and that is, if you do, and I recommend it, if you do have your drip system on a timer, you're going to want to empirically determine how long to run your drip system so that your plants are adequately watered. You need to run 2 gallons of water. Now, if we were engineers, I could take the emitter rate and calculate how long to run my timer each time it waters. But instead of doing a calculation, I'm going to do it the real science way, not the engineer way. And the real science way is that I'm going to install a drip emitter onto the end of a line, and then I'm going to drop it in a gallon container that I know holds a gallon of water, and I'm just going to run my system until that gallon container is full. And then I'm going to multiply that time by 2, so that I'm getting 2 gallons of water out in the time that my system's running through that emitter, and that is my time on my timer. We've gone through installation of a drip system that is good for specifically watering plants. Now, if you wanted to water a larger area of plants, say a raised bed, you would want to do it differently. And that is going to be a whole separate video, because I do want to plumb my raised beds to a timer. So I'm going to link this video to that one when it's done. Of course, it's not done yet. We did this one first because this is a lot easier. Thank you for joining me in my garden. I hope you had a great time, and I hope you have a wonderful time in your own garden.